Hello all, this is Bruce with Rucksack Nation, and I'm just out here for a nice stroll through a little trail near town here, and I came across one of my favorite and perhaps very useful plants in the Northwoods. This is called the Balsam Fir, and this tree has made its way into pharmacological books in the, I believe, 17 or 1800s. See if I can, there you go. You see it has these blisters all over, these little pustules, and inside them, as one I popped earlier, is if you cut it with their knife or poke it with a stick or your finger, it secretes this resin, and you can collect that resin. You can eat it, totally fine to eat it. You don't want to eat too much of it because it's high in sugars and you'll get diarrhea, and that's not good in the bush. Also, it's very sticky. If you're out here and you forgot your chapstick, I still have some on my finger. You can apply it to your lips, keep your lips moist and keep them from cracking. It is a topical anesthetic. You can put it on cuts and wounds, and it's antimicrobial, antifungal. It's a really wonderful plant. You can see here are here's just dried resin from when it was probably defending itself or was wounded. And when I say defending itself, this tree has these pustules to protect from beetles and boring insects. So you could scar this tree with your knife if you wanted to collect a bunch, and it would secrete more of what I just showed you, and it would end up drying like this. And the idea is once an insect tries to burrow into the bark of the balsam fir, it'll become trapped in this sticky resin. It's also very flammable. You can use it you can add it to your bird's nest kindling bundles, and it's like a little bit of gasoline added on there. This tree is also listed in the Peterson's edible wild plants for the northeastern area as a survival food. And that bit of resin, what I just tasted, it tastes a bit like gin, but it's not very pleasant, not in my opinion. Though this tree is listed as a survival plant in the Peterson's Field Guide to Wild Edible Plants because you can cut it open all times a year and you can eat the cambium layer in it. It's full of calories. You can grind it and turn it into a flour and use that in all sorts of things for porridge or bread if you have a binding agent. It's a fantastic plant to know if you're ever in the Northwoods up here. A bit more on the pharmacological properties. I said it's a topical anesthetic and analgesic. It's used to close wounds because it's very sticky. I've covered cuts and scrapes and abrasions that I've had with it, and it's healed remarkably fast. For what I believe to be healing remarkably fast. It may have been a placebo effect, but I don't believe so. It healed pretty quick. It's used for the treatment of all sorts of respiratory issues. The native people would take balsam fir sap, and they'd make a tea out of it and inhale the fumes from it, and it would clear up your nose. And it's a very piney taste and very strong piney smell. Here's some of its needles. You see that it differs from pine. It is much more of a fir spread there. They're alternating, looks like alternating needles on either side, and they're pretty flat instead of like circular. It doesn't spiral around. It goes straight on one plane flat. Alternating needles. Well, that's balsam fir for you. Incredibly useful plant. I actually brought a little vial with me, and I'm going to try and fill it up as best I can with this balsam sap, and I'm going to put it in my little primitive medical kit. It's great to have at home if you think of like if you think of how you would have aloe at home. This stuff is great with that. Well, for things like that, for treatment of cuts and burns, and it heals it up real great. It's sterile, it helps prevent microbes. What you could do to add even more benefit to it is apply a layer of the balsam sap to a wound. If you were in an emergency situation, of course, always seek medical help. But you could apply some balsam sap to a wound. You could add some sphagnum moss on top of that, which is notoriously sterile because of the pH levels that the sphagnum moss creates its own environment, and it's antimicrobial in itself. That'll help keep the area even more sterile and padded, and then you could apply another layer of balsam sap if you needed to hold that sphagnum moss down. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and this has been Bruce of the Rucksack Nation.